Hello everyone and welcome to Momir Basic Daily. I'm just going to start off by showing here up in this corner in the beta client, and now in the feature section tournaments we'll pull up a list of the coming up tournaments. As you can see here, the MomirR1 is right here. If I click details, it takes me straight to it, which means if you're in a little bit of a rush, kind of close to catching a tournament, you can skip a little step. It also makes it easier to see what's going on right up front. And so here I just hit it and click down here, and it loads up, has me load my deck, and we just now wait for it to start. Alright, here we are in round one. As you notice in the beta, you get you don't have the little command box that you used to have in the previous versions. It's the Momir avatar sits on the field the entire time. It'll move slowly over to the right as you draw more lands. My opponent won the die roll and he's playing first, which is generally the best idea. I don't think I directly mentioned in my article, but one thing to keep in mind is that you never ever want to mulligan. Momir, I'm going to bring up my chat on the other side, sorry about that. I keep my chat off on the other screen just to keep things clear. It's one of the handy things about having dual monitors, and they definitely set the beta up to be a lot more usable on multiple monitors than previous versions. So if you have that, you're lucky in that sense. So my opponent basically just got a 1/1 for 2. He can see what lands I have in my hand, not that that matters. Which I'm fine with, because that's nothing too threatening. It also means he's probably, I'm guessing he's going to skip a 3 or a 4, as playing a 2 when you're on the play. I mean, you just skip something if you want to go all the way up to 8. I mean, this could be pretty good, but unfortunately he has a 1/1 black creature. So we'll see what if he plays something, and if he can block. So I mean, he basically just drew another blank 1/1. It could have been better, but this early it does nothing. So essentially none of those are something that I'm going to be using. They're just not that useful abilities. There's no point in me attacking here. He'll just trade, and if he ends up killing, if the creature ends up dying later, I might be able to get in with this for 2 damage, so there's no point in trading now. Alright, I mean, so far both of us have drawn very boring creatures. We're just not drawing anything that's that active right now. So here's an interesting question of would I want to keep this. That puts me so far behind that I'm not going to do it. It's just not worth it. I mean, it is a 5/5 flyer, but at the same time, that would mean I would have to skip a couple of drops and I'd reach 8s 3 turns after my opponent does, so not advisable. And my opponent shoots another generic creature. If he'd wanted there, he could have attacked, and I would have let the damage through. There was no... I mean, he would have gotten 1 damage through and would have traded creatures, but probably wasn't worth it. Alright, that's definitely not that bad. I mean, unfortunately it doesn't do much to stop his 4/4, but it does give me another body, which isn't the worst thing in the world. At this point I'm just gonna I think actually trading probably isn't the worst idea here. I'm not going to get use out of these creatures much otherwise, so... Alright, and there's something that's just absolutely amazing. I mean, for right now, I'll probably attack. If I run out of cards in my hand, I might draw some cards instead. Or if he plays a flyer that's would kill this or can stop it. Alright, so Magic Online is really lagging at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and pause and restart it. Alright, we're back here. As you notice, I had to switch clients. The beta client would not load anything on the screen after I reloaded it. So we'll see what we have here. My opponent got... in this case, I might as well just pick off some of his creatures. The 1 damage to him isn't that valuable at this point. Alright, here, this means I just don't play a island, as that means his 8/8 can't attack, and it just becomes an 8/8 that sits there. Alright, that's obviously a very strong card. I imagine it'll be very difficult for my opponent to come back from this at this point, especially since it's a first strike. I can now block the Craw Worm that he has. So this is one that I've run into a few times. It's just an interesting creature in that it means killing his creature still does damage to me. So it can be costly in the end. Here he's just attacking with the Craw Worm basically to essentially just to deal 6 damage to me. So I just block it and let it die, and I take the 6 damage. And then here, when he attacks with this one, I think actually what that makes me want to do is I block over here, as that will kill this guy, and I don't take any damage from it, especially since it's his first strike. So I'll put this here just because I have no need for it. He has to block at this point because he will die if he doesn't from the double damage for my 2 flyers. And sorry if you hear that noise in the background, that's just my wife's cell phone ringing. Alright, now I just got a generic. Interestingly enough, with Glacelda out there, I can now block the Crawworm without a problem, and it'll just trade. Or it won't even trade, it'll just kill it. So my opponent's in a very tough position at this point. He pretty much has to draw something. It does appear that my opponent decided to end on 7s, which is a very poor choice in my opinion. 8s are usually so much stronger. So this card might have been able to save him, but it just doesn't do enough, because next turn either one of my creatures, either one of my flyers getting drew kills him. And I also have the Trampler that does an obscene amount of damage if it tramples over. So, I mean, here he can get in for 9, or actually, this would do 0 damage, and that would only deal 3. So, it is game over for him. An important thing that I've seen plenty of people do is it's important to note that you should not play a creature if you're going to be able to attack for the win. Because if I play the creatures and I drew the Caradact Leviathan, it would just bounce everything, and I would be in a lot. I could end up losing at that point. Whereas here I don't. I don't think he understands exactly how this creature works. In that he made that attack. He's gonna die anyway, so I don't really. I mean, it doesn't make much sense. Who knows though? We'll see if my opponent decides to play a 2 here again and goes 2 to 7. I still think it's a very suboptimal line. Yeah, see, this time he didn't play a 2. I don't know if he meant to do that last turn, he just got distracted, or what happened. Alright, I mean, nice thing about getting that one on the draw like this is that means I'll be able to hit for 4 next turn, and then it'll just turn into a blank 2-1. He may chump block, it depends on what he draws, but it just means that I don't play a land before I attack, and I put that in, and I play my Momir afterwards. So we have to fly in 1-2. In his position, I probably wouldn't block it myself, just because a flyer is going to be better than just having a 2-1 long term. Yeah, and it's just not worth preventing the 4 damage to lose the first flyer of the game. So in this, whenever you have anything that is tribal based, it's almost a guarantee that it's never going to work in your favor. So in this case, if I ever use this, I know I'm going to lose 1 life. It's just what I would count on. So I mentioned this in my article, but flip cards never flip in Momir. If you get them, you should always auto-yield, just because it makes things a lot quicker. So here I right-click on this, and I should auto-yield. Hope my opponent does the same, so that way we don't have to go through that process every single upkeep, because spells are never cast, so it just will eat up time, and both my time and my opponent's time. So you can see my opponent did not auto-yield to it. This is an interesting card. It could essentially hold this back. Although, I don't think I'm going to leave mana untapped. Getting another 4 versus a 5 isn't going to be worth preventing the 1 damage. Although my opponent seems to decide that having a 7/7 is more important than having either of those two creatures. There's some Devour creatures that have very powerful abilities when they devour, and it makes complete sense to do that. This is not one of those ones that I would consider that to be the case for. I mean, here it has Devour 2, so I mean, I'm definitely going to eat these two. It turns into a 7/7, I gain 4 life, and I keep my flyer. And so now I can trade with his 7/7 if he decides to attack. And so that's exactly what I mean, in that there's some Devour creatures that are actually worth sacrificing for. Especially Devour 1 isn't that powerful. So depending on what I pull out here, I very easily could just attack with my 7/7. He may or may not trade. He may... I mean, if he wanted to trade, he would have attacked, I imagine. But he might... I'm not really sure. So that doesn't do anything. Since I can't target players, it's just going to deal a whole 1 damage. And since I have enough lead on the health or the life totals at this point, I definitely will attack. And he's far enough behind the trade, so that's probably why he didn't actually attack, because I could just let it through, and then he wouldn't want to block with his large flyer. Okay, I mean, so he just drew another flyer at this point, which is very unfortunate for me. I don't have enough mana to pump this to trade with anything. So I just really need to hope to hit a flyer on one of my next few draws here. That will work. That's big enough to block either of his creatures. I mean, obviously I wish I'd been able to give it Bloodthirst, but I have no way to get damage through. And most of the time it's correct to play the creatures beforehand. There's so few Bloodthirst creatures in comparison to haste creatures, or creatures that have abilities that you would want to use before combat. So if I don't draw something really good here, this is pretty much an auto-lose, as he can just lock down all of my creatures and most of my lands. There are a few outs, but they're very few and far between. And really the only way is if he decides for some reason not to pay for it, which would be a very unwise decision on his place. I mean, I guess what I'd hope for most at this point is actually my own copy of it, because that'll get rid of his. Obviously that didn't happen. Here I think I'm just going to attack. He's going to tap it anyway, so he'll be able to attack through. Here it just gives him the chance. I mean, if he wants, I'll deal 6 damage. He's going to tap it anyway next turn. So, might as well see if he wanted to lose a creature or just take 6 damage. I mean, here I'm taking 17 damage just from these. If he taps everything, so I mean, it's very unlikely I'll be able to win at this point. This is one of the 8s that pretty much just is an auto win. If you get one, you just need to get one attack with it, and there's little to nothing your opponent will be able to do at that point. We'll see if I can hit some absolutely amazing 4 that pulls this game out, although I am not aware of any that would do such a thing. Yeah, I mean, it has a haster, but it's infect, so it doesn't even help me. So we're on to game 3. This is my first game on the play, hopefully. That works to my benefit. Alright, here's game 3. I'm going to play first, and one thing I was thinking about while my opponent let the sideboard time out for some reason, there was actually an out for me last game at the 3-drop level. If I had drawn a Village Bell Ringer, it untaps all my creatures, at which point I would then be able to swing in with enough damage to win. So it's another one of those, being very familiar with every creature that you can be gives you even the smallest advantages in Momir. Sometimes it can pay off. I don't know if there's a similar effect at 4 off the top of my head, but I did think of one at 3, so I should have chosen 3 at that point instead of 4. I'm guessing my opponent stepped away from his computer at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and just pause. Alright, we're back. My opponent came back, so we can start the game off. So I did the number crunching. The odds of getting a mana producer are still so low that I don't think it's worth using using a 2 instead of a 3. My opponent decided not to play a 2, which makes me wonder if he's planning to go up to 9, which seems strange. So it's possible that I get this activated. I would say it's unlikely. To begin with, unless I have a dire need, I'm not going to throw it out. I'm actually really sure why my opponent has skipped now 2 and 3. 10s are terrible, so maybe he's planning to go even further all the way and go up to 11 or 12. I'm not really sure what's going on there. So I can make him discard here, which is nice. And it's not even non-land, so most of the time discard is non-land. If it's something along those lines, where it reveals a hand. I still find it very strange that my opponent skipped both 2 and 3. Although with the discard it's now as though he only skipped 2. Here I won't attack with this, just a small chance that I get above 30 life. That's such a powerful effect that it's worth holding on to if I can, because it could be and turn out to be extremely valuable. And I mean, here this is just a blank 3/4, so that's a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. So here, if he decides to block, he can turn this into an 0-1, but he pays 2 life to prevent 3 damage, essentially. So there's not much value in that, but it's always up to him, obviously. So that's actually really good. 2 5/5s that both trample will make things very difficult for him. I mean, I just need to hope here that he doesn't draw something that has enough power to stop me from attacking with these two. I really hope he draws a 4 power or something and I can attack with, or I mean, even a 3 power would be even greater because something I can attack with all 3 of these. So here I definitely will attack. With my 2 tokens, if he blocks, he loses a 5/5 flyer, which is really big game. Actually, in this case, I think it's better to attack first, because then he doesn't know if I draw a flyer. Because if I drew a flyer, he may this gives him less information to decide if he's going to block one of these tokens with his 5/5 or not. And here I imagine he will pay the 2 life, as that'll shrink it down to a 2/2. I'm okay with that because he pays 2 life. He still takes 2 damage, and I trade my 6 drop for both his 5 and 6, which is fine with me. And so this is one of those things that I actually think in Momir, if you have the opportunity to do this, you should actually do it to yourself, not your opponent. If I draw a Threshold guy on this next turn, for instance, I now have Threshold active, whereas previously I would not. And so he basically activated Threshold for me. Obviously, in the end, Momir, you always reach Threshold, or almost always reach Threshold. So we'll see what happens. That actually worked out really well that I attacked first, since I now have a 9/9 Trampler. Like I said, Bloodthirst is something that I don't normally count on that being activated. Although the random times you do, it is quite nice. So this is an interesting card. Essentially, it means if the game goes on too long, he'll just die from that. So I imagine that he will just use it to block here and take only 2 damage, although he may decide to wait in hopes that he can kill my 9/9 next turn. However, that does put me in a very strong position, as I'll have 5 creatures to his 2 at that point. And I just drew another Trampler. So we will see what happens here. Another situation, once again, I'm going to put auto yield on. If for some reason this stays around, I don't want to have to keep auto yielding to it, or yielding to it, and it saves time. Momir can quite often actually run out of time if the game just turned into a giant stalemate. And if we both pull Platinum Imperiums and then we just equally draw Blightsteel Colossus when we get to 12s, for instance, we'll run out of time. So I think saving time, just like every other format, is advisable, as the chess clock really changed that in online Magic versus the in-person Magic. So we'll see what he gets here. I mean, he has to get something fairly impressive to just not die. I have 7 damage on these 3 creatures alone. Yeah, so I mean, at this point he's lost the game. With the trample damage, even from those 2, even if he blocks, it'll kill him. So yeah, so he conceded. Hopefully in this next game I will be back in the beta, and we'll see you then.